And there we go. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to yet another edition of Accuracy in America. I'm Don Irvine, joined by BranMcNicoll.
Good morning. Hello, deplorables, drags, despicables, and dog-faced pony soldiers.
There you go. Much better than last week.
I've been practicing.
I
get that wrong.
Yeah, just stand in front of
our people.
Yeah, stand in front of a mirror. You know, it's like have it taped to your mirror as you shave or something.
That's right.
All right. Well, good. Glad to have you back with me. And we've got a lot to talk about today. And so we'll start off with the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So it was interesting in a way because as you know, I do another program with some other cohorts on Friday night, and it's a little bit of a food fight at times in the sense that we have 5 or 6 people depending upon the show. Sometimes we have 7 people on there, which is just insane to control. But I think we had 5 this last week, and as I try to kind of moderate it, I'm not the official moderator, but I try to make it flow a little bit. In my news feed pops up, Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies. So we talked about that on the show. It's a surprise and yet not a surprise. She's had this pancreatic cancer. She's been battling with it. She has been in the hospital, out of the hospital. She, in a way, the pandemic was somewhat of a blessing for her because it allowed her to work remotely without having to really miss anything or miss much. As the Supreme Court went to remote, teleconferences or whatever, Zoom calls, to hear their arguments. But definitely was a shock in the sense of at that point we were 46 days or something like that, 45, 46 days from the election. And then boom, this just drops out of nowhere and has created, quite the firestorm since then. Lots of things going on here. I don't know. Is there anybody out there that that was ready to deal with this and the election at the same time?
I mean, it's one black swan after the other, I mean, the thing about it is it's kind of a dicey thing because, every step in this is a potential minefield for both Trump and Biden, really, like say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing here. And there's no way to, there's not enough time for voters to forget the mistake, right? Trump made a mistake in 2017. We may not be paying that much attention to that mistake today, right? But this one, you can't do anything that's going to go away. It's all going to come back to you. I thought he handled, I guess he was told by a reporter after speaking at a rally. And, while he was speaking, liberal pundits were tweeting, he's not even going to mention RBG. He's not even going to say anything about it. Well, he didn't know, right? The reason he didn't say anything about it was he wasn't aware of it. So he gets asked afterwards. A reporter said to him, what do you say about her dying? And he's like, she died? And his reaction, I don't know if you've seen that video, is really powerful because he stepped back and you could tell that, he had a lot of respect for her, even if he's not on the same side politically and so forth, and he said, she'd lived a tremendous life and she was a tremendous person. And he lived, it was very disciplined for Trump. He said some nice stuff about her and then he walked off. He didn't sit there and get in a back and forth of questions over it because he wasn't ready for that. So he comes back and, then the question turned immediately to what's going to happen. How are they going to fill the seat and so forth. And, he kind of got off of it. But, to just say a bit about her, she was there a long time. She was a stalwart of her side. I don't know if you saw this. I put on Facebook, I'm like, why, most of the messages that came out from the right didn't agree with her politically, but respect for what she did and meant to the country and to, the judicial system and so forth, and her contributions to the United States and so forth. And I'm like, what about her engendered that reaction? Why was it like that? Why was it so overwhelmingly like that? And, it was interesting because a lot of people came on and said, well, she signed the death warrant for 70 million babies. I don't really have anything nice to say about her, and I'm not going to invent nothing nice to say about her now. right? Which is true. It's unarguable. She was on the wrong side of the abortion question terribly and repeatedly and vigorously. And, that can't be forgiven or overlooked, but, there's a strain in America that likes respect, that craves respect. And I think they're looking for things where the person comports themselves in a way that you can respect them without liking it. I also think that a huge benefit to her was, the well-known, well-documented friendship she had with Scalia, Justice Scalia. Because I think people thought, well, if they can get along and be friends and not just get along, not just tolerate each other, not just manage to get out of the room without slashing each other's face, right? But actually be friends and have a relationship and go to the opera and the things they did together and so forth. Then we can, that's kind of a blueprint for America, kind of a hopeful note there in the passing of her. So, a lot happened there. And now I guess we move on to what happens next.
Right. No, I mean, and your point is well taken on this, because actually on the whole thing about Trump, not knowing, so as we were going through this show on Friday night, and it was near the end. I think it came in at about 7:45 or something like that when we first heard about it. So we were still on live on Facebook at the time, but as soon as we ended the show right around 8, one of the other guys was, I guess he was watching the live stream of the Trump, rally, and he says, "Well, I don't think he knows because he's still talking and going on. I don't think he's wearing an earpiece or anything like that. And we saw, later on that was definitely proven that, he was asked afterwards, and it was a complete shock to him, to hear that had happened. And yes, good, she did have that great relationship with Scalia. I think for a lot of conservatives, humanizers are, this is one of the problems, I think, with politics in general. I mean, both of us have plenty of liberals that we just can't stand on a political basis. We probably have fewer of those that are people that we can't stand so much that we would, it would really take a lot to hold back when they pass away or whatever. But there are a lot of people which say, look, I respect them for the opinions that they had. I didn't agree with them, but I respect them. And I think, that's what America needs to see, is more of that kind of civility, that above the fray type of a thing like that. Supreme Court justice definitely deserves respect. This is not an easy job. You may not agree with all of them, but the level of vitriol that is heaped, upon these people in many kind by, one side or the other is just ridiculous. I mean, in the hearings, I mean, we with all of this happening, we now go back and we think about the Kavanaugh hearings and just the nastiness that was there.
Right.
Zero respect for the process and what was going on at that time. So,
I just want to say that anyone who gets themselves in that position to be considered for a court seat, right, of either party, is a brilliant legal mind and an accomplished person who has done a lot in life. To get your name on that short list is an incredible feat in and of itself. To be appointed to that and serve on that court, we only have 9 of them. I mean, for now, it could change.
Yeah. Right.
But it's very hard to get there. There's not a lot of people who've managed to do it. And so, if you could just treat these, accord a little respect to people, a lot of other things in the country might get better.
Yeah, you have these terms will last 20, 30 years, depending upon the age of the person. That's when they actually were confirmed to the court. So, this is a very long tenure. I mean, it's a lifetime appointment, right, in essence. And so if you're in your 50s, you could easily serve for 30 years. Or more, depending upon your longevity. And, the other thing about it, too, is that you also, especially lately, the way these hearings have been going lately, is that by accepting the nomination, you are now opening up your family and your past life and all of these kinds of things to a lot of scrutiny, for which generally the other side, whichever side it is, is not very good about respecting the family and their privacy and all of those things. So that opened, your kids, your wife, all these people, just they start getting, they start hearing things about their husband or their wife that, it really doesn't need to be said in the court of public opinion in that sense, and thrown out there.
Yeah.
A lot of mudslinging that goes on. Yeah, so it's a fascinating time. I'm not really sure. I mean, Mitch McConnell, as we know, has called that. He says, yeah, we'll have a vote, by election day, for this, even though we were talking about a very, very short time frame, because Ginsburg's funeral is not till the end of this week. Trump has now said, I guess he will announce his nomination at 5 p.m. on Saturday. So that's a few more days. That gives us 38 days or something like that, before the election. That's a very short time frame based on previous confirmation hearings and things like that. Doesn't mean it's impossible, but it's a very short time frame. Then we had, the regular, tug of war with the Republicans. Okay, so McConnell calls for this. Now you have to say, how many of his senators are going to stay home and actually, stay with that? We knew Susan Collins probably from the get-go was not, in a tough re-election battle, she was probably not going to be on board. Lisa Murkowski's not facing re-election, but it's no surprise where she's gone. Mitt Romney was probably one of the bigger wild cards. I mean, Cory Gardner could have gone either way too. He was in a tough battle. Lamar Alexander. We had a few of those there, but I was probably even more concerned about Romney because of his track record. But he came out and he says, "Look, the Constitution says the president needs to do this," and so he didn't outright say he would vote for the nominee. He's going to wait for the qualifications. But, barring some really weird surprise, President Trump is going to nominate someone with some pretty sterling credentials, because you just mentioned what brilliant legal minds get to this point on the short list anyway. So, it's the nominee, barring something very unusual, should get confirmed. Of course, the Democrats are having they're having a hissy fit about that, but what can they do?
That's right. Well, first of all, Collins has not said she would not vote for the nominee.
Right.
What she said was, because I have it here, the president has a constitutional authority to make a nomination to fill the vacancy, and I would have no objection to the committee beginning the process of renewing the credentials. Given the proximity to the election, I do not believe that the Senate should vote on the nominee prior to the election. But that she does not say that if the vote goes forward, she would vote against it.
Right.
She's just like, my opinion is we should wait. That's not we won't vote against it. I won't vote for it. So then they may, like you say, they made her let her do what's electorally best for her, given that she seems to be in a tough spot. But, she's in a tough spot every time.
Right.
She's behind every time. Everybody worries about her, whether she's going to make it over the line every time, and she wins every time. So, and she does it by bobbing and weaving on stuff like this and not appearing too hardcore conservative or too liberal. So, and I believe her opponent is kind of far to the left and, is easy to characterize as such. And I think a lot of people are going to come home from that at the end anyway and say it's too big a break from what we usually do as Americans. So I do think that she will end up winning, even though she's behind right now. And I do think that if you got a well-qualified nominee that, you had a nice visit there when they did the visits, right? And so forth, that she could be brought around to support the nominee. She came around to support Kavanaugh at the end too.
Did President Trump on this, by making the announcement that it would be a woman, was that just partly to say, well, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, it's kind of her seat for the last, couple of decades or whatever, that type of thing. Is it Joe Biden-ish, in the sense of when Joe Biden said, I'm going to have a woman as a VP?
Yeah. I think what Trump said at the time was that, it's a seat. We don't want to change the gender makeup of the court. So I'll be looking for a woman to do it. And so, it eliminates some people who would be good candidates. And, he had said at the same time, that he's also looking at Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz and Tom Cotton and Mike Lee and Mike Lee's brother. So, there were some guys who got considered too. But yeah, that's what he said. I'm not for all that. It's like pick the best person and quit worrying about all that. And all those things will iron themselves out, because sometimes the best person is going to be a woman. Sometimes it's going to be a person of color. There's good people in every walk of life. So, I could have done without that aspect of it. Now, it also looks like it's about a 2-to-1 issue polling wise to fill the seat, to take care of this before the election, to do it with the present people. I think, and I these people are like, well, we should let the next group choose. And the Republicans' argument is we have chosen. We elected this president and we elected this Senate to forward his judicial nominees, right? And they have done so at a record pace. Okay. But, beyond that, if you wait till after November 3rd, then to me, it has a lot less legitimacy, because, if they're not going to control the Senate, in the new Congress, then what is legitimacy of that Senate making that decision, right? The time to make the decision is now, or, as soon as they can vet the person and have hearings. Also, I see a lot of people on the right saying skip the hearings, they're not constitutionally required. Just, name the person, drag them up there and vote. And it's like, no. You're already fighting the argument, and this is a minefield. You don't know what thing you can do and tick off a 10-point, polling swing against yourself. Either candidate, they don't know what to do. So, stay as close to the process as possible. Let those people have their say. I think it's very good for the Trump ticket that Kamala Harris has the opportunity to question this nominee, in the Senate Judiciary Committee. I think that helps us. She really soured. I think one thing the left does not understand is, not every woman in America, but a lot of women looked at what happened to Kavanaugh and said, I don't know if he did this or he didn't do this, but that's everybody's brother, dad, uncle, friend, coworker, just chunked at accusations at him that you really can't prove you didn't do it, and, savaged his family, dug up, his high school yearbook and the notebooks he kept as a high school kid. And, there was a lot. I mean, they delved into every aspect of this guy's private life, slagged his whole family for months on end, right, to try to keep him from getting on the court. So, A, we owe them nothing. We owe them zero consideration after that stunt. But B, you have to allow, that turned public opinion against the Democrats. People looked at those people, Dianne Feinstein, Kamala Harris, differently from that point forward. And I think that they should get the chance to do that again.
Okay, well, that's an interesting point, because do you think that Kamala Harris learned anything from that experience, and that getting a chance to help vet this nominee, does she pull back a little bit, or is it part of her nature to kind of be like that because she's a former prosecutor? How will that be? I mean, thinking about the campaign and where she stands in the campaign structure, if she comes across as harsh and as nasty as she did on the Kavanaugh thing, does that hurt does she think that she could hurt the Biden, Harris ticket? I mean, how do you look at that?
I mean, if I were them, I would do pro forma here. I would legitimately better at whoever, the she is who gets the nod, and ask the appropriate questions and do it in a collegial manner. And, if the person's qualified, back off and let it happen. You can't stop it. And you can look above the fray. You can look like you dealt with this dispassionately and seriously, but not in a mean and nasty way like they did before, right? So it'll be a good test to see, does she have the discipline to do that? Does Mazie Hirono have the discipline to do that, to actually pull back and actually ask questions that matter and leave out questions that don't? So, and what's the timetable? When will those hearings start and so forth? So it'll be interesting to see like what they do, because also, one other point that's been raised is that all those people are off the campaign trail while this is going on. All those senators that have to be there for this, can't be campaigning, and it hurts. Lindsey Graham's in a tough race too. So there's a lot of them who are hurt by this. So, but I don't know that it moves a lot of votes either way, but that's just me.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, actually, I had not even considered that last point at all about the fact that the senators all will be in DC and will not be campaigning for those that are in a re-election battle. Very interesting. We don't know how that'll play out. Gives probably a little bit of advantage to their opponents on the one hand, but I think voters understand that, they can also, it's also an opportunity potentially for those Republicans to shine and to say, this is why I'm here and this is why you need to vote for me.
Yeah, the best thing Lindsey Graham ever did was the speech to, "Are you a gang rapist?" speech to Kavanaugh, right? Yeah. I mean, the people in South Carolina were up applauding, standing ovation in front of their TV when he did that, so it gives him a chance too. So it'll be interesting to see how all that plays out.
All right. Now, I want to ask you this question about, are the Republicans hypocrites for pushing this through compared to how how McConnell did not take up the Merrick Garland nomination in a presidential election year?
Absolutely not, for three reasons. First of all, in the case of Merrick Garland, a different party controlled the Senate. Right? You obviously were not going to approve a guy with that little time left. Second of all, if Democrats were in this position, they absolutely would do this, right? Without question. And any of them that suggest otherwise are lying through their teeth. Third of all, what happened to Kavanaugh, right? We owe them nothing. I mean, they deserve one crammed down their throat because of how they treated him. That's inexcusable. It can never be written off.
Yeah, and I agree with all of that, because as I looked at it too, I thought, okay, look, yeah, there was an election, but we knew there will be a new president as well. Okay,
That's
so
right.
To me, that's also another key for this, is that the Democrats are whining about all this, but there's no guarantee that it'll be Joe Biden, in charge, come January next year.
Or a Democrat Senate.
Right, or a Democrat Senate.
The possibility of that is changing as we speak too.
Right. So as a result of that, I think I see this as very different than 2016, and I think that the Democrats' arguments on this just fall very flat at this point in time.
Yeah, I do too.
All right. So now, who do you expect to be the nominee, at this point? I mean, if you've been going through, just your observation, what do you think, your gut instinct?
Well, I believe, I don't know, but I believe the lady from Florida.
LaGoya?
Yeah.
Lagoa, I guess it is Lagoa.
Yeah, Gamoa.
Barbara Lagoa, Lagoa, I think.
Yeah. I believe so. I think that her relevant experience is there. I think that Trump does not want to poke a stick in the eye. He knows he's going to get at least one more, maybe two more, if he wins re-election, which is now increasingly looking like he will. And so I don't know why he would. I think he can wait. Now he said, he was holding Amy Coney Barrett back for Ginsburg's seat. He has actually said that. So she's been in the White House to visit him, and the sources say, people are saying that that's who it'll be. But I just see him like veering off that train wreck and just trying to keep it on. There's no, either way, both women are devout Catholics, and I know in your faith, one of the things that y'all understand very well is religious discrimination, and we do too. And it's one of those things. It's like it's been hard to explain that to my kids. That we are for religious freedom. We have to fight for that every day, because we're one of the religions that gets cut off. We're one of the religions that gets hate on, right? And we're one of the religions that gets excluded. They find out you're Catholic, you can't, like my dad used to say, construction business, you could never be the foreman if you were Catholic, right? They found someone else. They just didn't trust Catholic. And so, the senators, a lot of the senators who are real relevant to this, including Harris and Feinstein and Mazie Hirono, long history of anti-Catholic bigot rhetoric in the Senate. In fact, they went after Kavanaugh something about that. They went after Barrett when she was confirmed to the post she has now. Feinstein famously said, the dogma lives deeply within you, right? So, Kamala Harris tried to exclude a federal judge because he was a member of the Knights of Columbus, which means basically he's because I'm one too. It's like you're a pancake flipper, right? Sunday morning, you're flipping the pancakes, right?
You're doing service.
That's right. It's just a service organization. Oh, no, that means you're too anti-abortion to be on the court. It's like, sorry, but anti-abortion people get to be on the court, right? That's why we have elections, lady. So, I think that's another thing is like Catholics right now are about 63% for Biden, which I totally don't understand, but there it is. But I think if you see, a week of Harris, Hirano, Feinstein, and others beating on this nominee because she's Catholic, that's going to flip some of those votes.
Yeah. So I guess, right now, my only influence on this is an email I received from the Judicial Action Group, a guy I had, Philip Jareggi, who I'd met probably 10 or 15 years ago when he first started this group, or however long it was. So this is, you have what it is at the Judicial Crisis Network, and so you have a bunch of conservative legal, lawyer type organizations, and he's also one of those types of things. But he had sent out an email, over the weekend, I guess, on this, and he kind of put up a warning flag, on Lagoa, because he didn't see a long track record compared to Barrett. There's definitely, like, she's got a track record and a history and all of these things. And for a conservative like him, he can say, we see conservative opinions. We see that she is a conservative judge. She has ruled on X amount of cases, in this fashion. Lagoa has a much smaller track record to go on. So he just wants to, he's throwing out there the possibility that you've got this kind of stealth candidate, this person we don't really know a lot about. You definitely don't want another David Souter or whatever, coming across.
Some fear that Barrett falls into that category.
That's interesting. But on the other hand, Lagoa, she's also got a good little backstory, being the daughter of Cuban immigrants. This is good. Florida, there's some political things that when you're in election season, you have to lay all your cards out on the table and try to figure out how this is going to really work. I think either right now, at least, it seems that either one of them would be very good. I guess I'm going to
lady from Michigan named Joan something.
Yeah, I think
Trump
right.
said to like her too. So
yeah, we don't know. We one thing we have learned over time in our lifetime of Supreme Court appointments is that there will be surprises, right?
That's right.
You think it's this person, and it's like the person out of left field comes in there that you had no idea was on that list or whatever, that would have no chance whatsoever. So we will wait and see at 5 p.m. I can't remember, maybe whether or not Trump was actually planning on, was he actually having a press conference, or was he just going to tweet it out?
He'll probably have a press conference. He'll have the person there to introduce him.
Yeah. I just, with President Trump, I never know. It's like there's so much news comes out via Twitter. You never know, but that's true. You would want the person and have a formal say, here's this person, let him speak a little bit, and do that as well, and do all of that. So,
you know how you don't get news anymore out of this White House? Leaks. Right? If people are leaking that it's this person or that person, it's probably not them.
Yeah.
Right? Because they don't leak anymore because they found out the consequences of that.
That's true. All right. So we spent, I wanted to spend a lot of time on this as well. So one more somewhat related thing to this was just that you mentioned at the beginning about what President Trump said about Ginsburg, how praiseworthy he was, how respectful he was of her. So Chris Matthews, former host of Hardball, he came out and he tweeted that he appreciated the presidential tone, basically, of how Trump handled this. And he just got ripped one upside, one downside note from liberals. Liberals have zero patience for any kind of praise,
Right.
of Trump at all. And coming from a liberal guy like Matthews, who was very critical of the president of Trump when he had his program, this was just like this is an unforgivable sin. But boy, the liberals, they just have no patience whatsoever.
What's funny about that is like Matthews says what he thinks.
Yeah.
He always kind of has, right? I don't think what he thinks, but like the tinkle up his leg and everything. And it's like, it wasn't, I mean, people laugh about that, but let's talk about that. That was his reaction. It's like, I don't know about this guy's policy chops. I don't know that he's has these great leadership skills, but when you see him up there speaking and you see, the promise of what's there, yeah, it was exciting. I can understand why people on the left got excited about Obama. It's not hard to see. Right? He's a good-looking guy. He sounded good. He talked the centrist unite everybody game. He didn't end up doing it, but he talked it. And I see where these guys could get a tingle up their leg. That was an honest look at that, and it was an honest look that people on our side are like, okay, you can't take him seriously as a journalist if he's that fanboy about Obama, right? But, he told you what he thought. It's like that reaction was, Trump stepped back and he caught his breath and he thought for a second, and then he said nice things about her, and then he walked off. That was what a good, disciplined, experienced politician does, which has not always been what Trump chose to do at any given moment, right? He actually did the exact proper thing in that situation.
Right. And as I recall, I mean, wasn't Matthews, I mean, he was pretty critical of Clinton, of several things too, right?
Yeah.
So
he says what he thinks, and
so I think
now
that
it's
goes
gotten him fired.
Yeah.
He must have been over the target.
Yeah. So I mean, he's not. I mean, it was a very abrupt end to his television career as such. But I thought it was interesting that he still has a Twitter handle of Hardball Chris. So he still tied himself very much to his old program and everything like that. All right.
But I will say this: the accusations that got him removed, that wasn't sudden. That was long term.
Right. That had been building up. I mean, it didn't just happen. It had been building up for a while, and things like that. And it's not that economically.
He's not the only one, but he is one of the ones.
Right. Another person that made some news, and is Don Lemon, one of our favorite anchors, hosts from CNN. So they have this thing where between him and Cuomo, as they're doing the transition, the handoff between their programs, they have a little bit of banter about things. And so they were talking about the election, electoral college. There was a little bit, just a few minutes, and Lemon goes off on this thing. He says, well, in essence, he said, if the Democrats win, if they win the Senate, they win the White House, it's, we need to blow the entire system up. For which, Cuomo.
Well, no, he said if they go through with appointing and confirming a successor to Ginsburg, then they need to blow it up.
Well, he's talking about the electoral college, though.
Right. That was one of the steps he named. Right. But when he started talking about blowing it up, he had a bunch of little ideas. That was one of them.
Yeah. So he had
the reason to blow it up was because the Republicans exercised their constitutional right to fill the seat.
Right. That started the conversation. And then Cuomo pushed back because, he says, you can't do that without, without the Senate, without an approval, the votes there by also the state legislature as well as the Senate. And he's kind of like, he says, well, we may get that. And apparently he's been trying to walk that back, saying I was taken out of context or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was pretty clear at least at the spur of the moment, what he was saying. At least what his hopes were.
Understand what was taken out of context.
Yeah.
I mean, he said, if they do this gives us, and it's kind of a talking point on the left. Joe Kennedy has said this, and some others, hey, if the Republicans go through this, everything's on the table. Buddy, you lied to do an impeachment investigation. You lied about the Mueller report. You invented Russia collusion, all this stuff. We spent 3 years dealing with all that kind of stuff because, were things not on the table then? Did you have weapons then that you didn't deploy? No, you didn't. You shot every bullet you've had the whole time. So to claim that now we're going to get serious, you've been serious. You've been trying to upend him and get him kicked out of office the entire time.
Yeah, matter of fact, that just reminded me, because I forgot, well, what's Nancy Pelosi with this whole court thing? It's like, well, basically, we still have some things at our disposal, which is like, we're going to impeach him again.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
not even the Democrats want to go through this.
Right. Yeah, because the polling shows that if they impeach him, it takes 4 points off every Democrat's poll numbers. Wherever that Democrat stands in their race right now, they'll be 4 points worse off if they make a move to impeach.
I mean, we even had that comedian Chris Rock, who had that interview with the New York Times, and he's like, he went after Blaze. He says, because you spent all that time on impeachment, basically, you let COVID, you let the coronavirus come into the country. Yeah. It's like, who said what? The liberal Chris Rock, Hollywood guy, comedian, he's saying that. Ouch, he's like, Pelosi, when impeachment, don't talk about that. That is not a good strategy at this point.
Right. You've heard no mention of it by any Democrat because they know it was a failure and it made people mad at him.
I mean, even Rahm Emanuel criticized her for doing it. It's like, no, this is not a good idea. This is not good for the country. But, they took their shot, right? Okay, so they had their shot. Do not do that. Yeah, and do not do that again. Do not think that this has any way that this would derail the Supreme Court process at all.
Right.
This is some kind of weapon they have at their disposal that is just kind of ludicrous. Thoughts? Well, let me ask you this.
Oh, let me say this before we move on. They debased impeachment in a way that it's never been debased before. The last time, right? That was the thinnest of gruel to try to make an impeachment out of. This would be even less than that. I mean, literally, someone asked AOC, who's pushing this nonsense, what are you going to impeach him for? And she's like, well, there's all kind of criminal activity we could impeach him for. It's like, okay, name one. Name a statute. Tell us what he did. Right? They really don't have that nailed down. If you do this, the unseriousness of the Democrats will be on display in a way that it will be hard for anyone to ignore.
Okay. All right. So this is one thing I definitely want to get your opinion on. So the Senate Republicans released their report on the Ukraine and the Bidens. What are your thoughts? I mean, it was like 87 pages from cover sheet to the end. So it's a lot of things to digest, but any thoughts about that initially?
I've been following it this morning, trying to, as people read it and write about it and so forth. It looks like Hunter Biden was on the take. It looks like other Biden family members were on the take, taking advantage of the fact that he was the vice president. His arguments, it's kind of like Reagan in the Iran-Contra. You can either say, yes, I approved doing this wholly illegal thing, or no, I didn't do it. And I have so little control over my son and my family members that, I can't even stop them from doing blatantly unethical, if not illegal things in my name, trading on my name to get rich. So, if, I don't know, people probably feel differently. The Iran-Contra, I thought it served good foreign policy goals. That didn't really bug me. But this was just blatant enrichment of this kid. So, I don't know how it comes from a Republican-led committee. There's not, it's a lot about, associated with shady characters, which is not a crime, by itself, unless you actually prove some quid pro quo and so forth. I think it will have some impact. It will be something that he gets asked about if reporters ever get a chance to ask him a question. And I read yesterday, and I don't know if this is true, that Kamala Harris has not taken any questions at any kind of press conference since she was appointed vice presidential candidate, since she was confirmed. She has not sat and answered questions yet, from reporters, as opposed to, one-on-one set up softball interviews that they do, right? So, I mean, at some point, that's another thing both of them got to look at is like they've done a real good job of protecting Joe and keeping him in his little place over there in Wilmington. The national reporters, you can kind of tell. I mean, they're starting to say, what is going on here? Like yesterday, they did the lid. They put out the lid notice, which is, at the time after which Joe will not be doing anything public today. There's nothing to sit here and watch for. and the lids are being at like 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. And 9 o'clock in the morning, they're saying no activity by our candidate. We're 40, whatever, 2 or 3 days out from the election, right? So, people are starting to look at that, even people on Biden's side, and saying, Trump's out speaking to 40 or 50,000 people every night, flying all over the country, talking to voters. His kids are out holding campaign events all over the place. You're sitting in the basement, sending emails to people. Maybe that's as good. We'll soon find out, I guess. But there's a lot of angst growing on the Democrat side, especially as the race tightens and the polls finally, like I guess there's ABC, Washington Post poll today. Trump's ahead in Florida and even overall, basically. So, the polling news is starting to get bad for Democrats too.
All right, this is a little bit long, but I'm going to read the last paragraph from this report.
Okay.
The records acquired by the committees also showed that Hunter Biden and his family were involved in a vast financial network that connected them to foreign nationals and foreign governments across the globe. Hunter Biden and Devon Archer in particular formed significant and consistent financial relationships with the corrupt oligarch Mykola Zlochevsky during their time working for Burisma, and their firms made millions of dollars from that association while Joe Biden was vice president and the public face of the Obama administration's Ukraine policy. Rosemont Seneca Fortin, an investment firm co-founded by Hunter Biden, received $3.5 million in a wire transfer from Elena Baturina, who allegedly received illegal construction contracts from her husband, the then mayor of Moscow. Moreover, Archer's apparent receipt of money for a car from Kengiz Rakishev of Kazakhstan while Vice President Biden was in Kiev is especially concerning in light of the timing. And finally, Biden and Archer's work with the Chinese nationals connected with the communist regime illustrate the deep financial connections that accelerated while Joe Biden was vice president and continued after he left office. The chairman's investigation has faced many obstacles from the minority and from executive agencies that have failed to comply with document requests. Accordingly, there remains much work to be done. That leads me to a question for you, though, is that if the Republicans maintain control of the Senate after the election, do you think they will try to dig further on this, or will they just say, it's over, we don't need to go after the Bidens anymore, it's old news?
Well, I don't know, because at some point, if Trump wins re-election, maybe if he wins re-election in 2024 or 2028, we'll get to see what Durham came up with. And that will be related to this, right? Those things are not entirely separate. And so, at that point, it could be raised to establish what happened with Ukraine and the attempt to force Trump from office with the impeachment and so forth. So, there could be reasons to keep chasing this related to that.
All right.
But now we're waiting on Durham, and who knows if anything will ever come of that.
All right. So I need to go back to the Supreme Court for one thing, because there's another thing that I wanted to ask you about that I forgot, which is why has Joe Biden not released a list?
Because if he does, if it either has people too radical to be considered, or it has people that will make the radicals angry, and he either loses his party or he loses the election, whichever way he goes. So yeah, it doesn't help him to do it, and and he hasn't really looked into it. We have a thing we're looking for, right? In judges on our side, it's like we're looking for what they say about certain things and how they handle certain situations, right? That's how our rating systems go and so forth. They are looking for people who are not that. And it's like what they actually are is, they argue amongst themselves about that. But, they're not, he's not, it doesn't really do him the good that it does a conservative, all things being equal. And it does even less now, especially since, the other day he kind of trashed Bernie, said socialism lost, and that's not who we are. Do I look like a socialist? And, so he's kind of telling the far left wing of the party he's not really their candidate. So what did they do? Those are some of the most active people, most likely to vote and put yard signs out and all that stuff for you. And he's saying, well, you're not really you're not really part of my coalition, because if you're part of my coalition, other people will drop out, so, he's walking a fine line there.
What I thought was interesting about it too was just that, he publicly said that, the Trump administration, the campaign, did not ask him for his list until after RBG died. But CNN pointed out that was not true.
That's right.
He mentioned it back in an interview in June with Christian Broadcasting Network. He mentioned it at the RNC convention in his speech. And he mentioned it when he released his last list on September 9th, and the campaign reiterated that. I mean, it's like Biden's, they're not paying attention. They're purposely trying to avoid it for the reasons that you're stated, is that, they're afraid to put out a list of candidates.
That's right.
And they're trying to skate by on this. And it's like, I find that to be kind of unconscionable in a way, but that's the way they protect themselves.
But it's the whole thing. I mean, their whole thing is don't really ever answer a question. Just avoid questions. Just avoid getting into these discussions. And Trump takes them on every day. He seeks them out. So you can't say, I mean, he at least tells you what he thinks, whether you agree or not. Biden is like, you have at some point, don't those people have to say, okay, why are they hiding this guy? Why won't they let this guy talk, right?
All right, final topic for the day will be the debate. So Chris Wallace has released the topics that he wants to discuss on September 29th. So by the time we come back together on this, we'll have the day after. It'll have occurred, I guess, next Tuesday. So he selected as the topics, not really surprising, COVID-19, the candidates' track records, the economy, race and violence in our cities, Supreme Court, and the integrity of the election. Now, one of the things that is interesting is that it seems that President Trump is actually heaping some praise on Joe Biden. Is this a little bit of, Joe Biden's, good guy or whatever, saying all these things? Is he trying to build Biden up a little bit to is he trying to raise the bar? Is he trying to lower the bar? What's the expectation for the Trump campaign? I mean, we used to talk about how we figured Trump was going to, kind of wipe the mat with this. Do you still believe that? In this, how will this go, knowing what the topics are going to be, do you think?
Well, for one thing, my fervent hope, and there's no chance that it will actually happen, is that Chris Wallace takes seriously his role. And his role is not to find trick questions that trip them up and cause them to go, right? His thing is to let them tell us what they think and what they would do, right? And for Biden too, and even though Biden has not faced tough questioning at all, and is in fact going on Chris Wallace's own show for fear of tough questioning, right? Which
Right.
Trump does every week, and Chris Wallace has pointed out. At least Trump comes on and takes the question. Biden, they duck me. They won't even give me a spokesperson, right? So, he might be more willing to ask tough questions of Biden than others would. I know when that came out, conservatives were like, how could Trump agree to this? But, I don't think it's that dumb for, I think they drew a pretty good one there. Now, my hope is that he will play a modest role in this, like ask questions that get the discussion started and get out of the way. And it's like, this is not about beating Chris Wallace's trick question. This is about illuminating who these guys are for the American people. And I think if you get to have honest discussions on this, that Trump will do very well. Because, for one thing, it's going to finally be time, and I think Trump is ready for this. But when they ask, they're going to say, okay, COVID response. And Biden's going to say, he let 200,000 people die, okay? And, either Trump or Chris Wallace is going to get to say, why do they, why is all 200,000 blamed on Trump? What should the number have been, and based on what? And what would you have actually have done to achieve that number? Because he can't say, right? When they ask him, what would you have done differently? He basically says what Trump was doing, right? Or he says things that are impossible, like a national mask mandate, or, I would have tested everybody the first day when we didn't have tests that worked, right? So what people will realize is that it's a lot of all talk and no action. You're also starting to see some think pieces of people saying, what did Trump do that was so wrong here? Because if you look back at it, and we know we predicted 2.5 million, 2.2 million would die, and we're below 200,000. And, the counts we have are inflated by a number of factors. It's died with instead of and so forth. And we've been all through that. Okay. Then, why do you say that he did a bad job? What would have been a good job? If we go back to the, 9,200 who actually died of COVID, would you say, okay, Trump did a good job limiting it to 9,200? Or would you say 9,200, how could he be so stupid, right? Because to me, that number is whatever that number is, they're just going to fill that number in and say Trump did a bad job, whatever, right? So, that's one of the ones. There was other topic that he can't. What were the other topics?
COVID, their track record, the economy, race and violence, Supreme Court, integrity of the election.
So, integrity of the election is a problem for the Democrats, and the economy is a huge problem. Trump can make a case for being the best president economically we've ever had. So, I think it could be tougher for Biden. Now, I will say this, a lot of conservatives think he's going to come out and drool on the stage and, all that kind of stuff. No, he'll be prepared, and he'll look like a debater. He'll look like a professional politician. I mean, he's been doing this a lot longer than Trump has. And, he'll be polished, and he'll handle the questions. And, so don't expect a blowout. It's not going to be 100 million to nothing, right? And, like Jen Rubin's already said, Biden will win all three debates. She's already declared him the winner of all three debates. So he'll have the media cheering for him and all this kind of stuff. So, Trump's up against it. He better be prepared. And, I think he will be. He has, Trump talks extemporaneously for 2.5 hours every night. So, they're not going to trip him up on some fact that he doesn't know about, right? I mean, he generally knows what he's talking about. So, it'll be interesting. I expect that Trump will win and that the media will say Biden won.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree that I think, Biden's had a long political career. He is a skilled debater. I think conservatives have got to understand that and realize that and quit getting into these, dementia. He's just going to. There are going to be problems for Biden potentially in terms of he does have a problem, with the gas, getting his facts mixed up. I mean, he said, what was it? In a speech or whatever he was doing, that that 200 million people had died.
Right. He's during the speech.
Yeah,
200 million during the speech.
Yeah, by the time I'm done with this speech, 200 million people. I was like, wow.
How long are you going to talk?
Yeah, exactly. So there are those problems that could just be blown up on him, but we'll see. We'll have to wait and see what happens.
The other thing is Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? So it's been a long time since Biden's been punched in the face. It's been a long time since he's really taken a good, thorough grilling by somebody that wasn't necessarily a friendly reporter. Right. So, he may have trouble burbling out answers, on the fly real quick to adversarial questions. Yeah, I mean, Trump won't, because he does that every day.
I mean, he faced some things during the Democratic debates, but during the Democratic debates, the opponents were only going to go so far. At that point, they knew that they had a limit as to, because they couldn't destroy a fellow Democrat completely. Right. That would be because if that person wound up as the nominee, they'd be in real trouble. So they created some
commercials.
Yeah, they could only go so far. Right. All right. Well, we're definitely into the 2-minute round. Go ahead.
Gale Sayers died this morning. Best football player in the history of the University of Kansas. A brilliant running back, some of the best moves ever to play in the NFL. Played real short career. He played 6 years, tore up his knee, never played again. He is also the subject of what we've been talking about. We've been putting this off a long time because neither me or Lori really want to do it, but showing the kids the movie Brian's Song. And it's a good time for that. There's a lot of discussion in the country about white-black relations and so forth. This is depicting something that was happening in the late 60s, early 70s, and involved Gale Sayers and his teammate Brian Piccolo, who died of cancer. So, I think it's time.
Yeah. No, that's great. I didn't know that. That's some sobering news. Gale Sayers was, who knows what he could have achieved had he not had that injury that ended his career.
He got totally. And nowadays, what happened to him would be fixed. He would, he would be all for a while, but he could come back and play and be productive.
Okay.
He was 77. He was a good guy.
All right. So I'll throw out another sports thing because it's just, I want to know from you, Justin Verlander, does he come back and does he play for the Astros after Tommy John surgery, or is he going to play somewhere else when he comes back eventually? And does he have much of a career left because he's going to be kind of on the old side?
He's 37. So by the time he came back, he would be 39. He's saying right now he wants to. He certainly doesn't have to. He's made a lot of money pitching. He made about prorated share of about $25 million this year. He could, I don't think he would come back to the Astros. He was happy there. He didn't have any problems with the Astros, but he was asked one time what he missed about Detroit. He said the summer. The summer in Houston is pretty harsh. So I could see him choosing a cooler climate.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I don't know. Maybe you do. You're the big, you're the sports authority for me in terms of that deep. Has there been another pitcher that has had Tommy John surgery that late in his career and come back?
I can't. That's a good point. I can't think of anybody who's been, 39, trying to make a comeback from Tommy John at 39.
Yeah, it's
one. You know what? That's a determined guy. I could see if anyone could do it, it'd be him. Yeah,
no, I mean, it's one thing when you're in your 20s, but boy, you're late 30s. That just seems to be awfully high bar. I mean, the only thing for him as a determination is to go for the 300 wins, right? He's already a Hall of Famer easily. So
and the one thing that might get him back to Houston is, and people don't understand this, but in baseball now, they don't have a head coach in baseball. They have a manager and they have a pitching coach, and they're essentially pretty close to equal in power, right? Because the pitching coach manages half your team basically,
right.
And he's the one who knows about that. And the Astros, their managers have changed. Their pitching coach, Brett Strom, has not changed, and he's the Bill Belichick of pitching coaches, a generational uber talent. Verlander might go back. I know when Garrett Cole got there, Verlander said, him and his geeks are going to put you in a room and tell you how to pitch and do what they say, whatever it is, whether you like it or not. So, he may go back because he really valued that advice.
All right, that'll be the end of the program as we are now finishing up with, what do we call it now? Sports talk?
Right.
We've started with accuracy in America, and we're now in accuracy in sports or something or other. Anyway, thank you everyone for joining us again today. Please always be safe and be well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anybody ever tell you otherwise. God bless America. We'll see you next week with a lot more news and a lot more fun, hopefully. All right, thanks a lot, everyone. I think we're off.
All right. Did you see the thing I sent you about the elevator speech?
Yeah. I'll pass that on.
I think that's basically what it is.
All right. Good enough.
Sir.
Thank you.
All right.
See you around. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.